Our house shared a wall with the mosque, and many times food prepared in our kitchen would be sent to the mosque. More precisely, it went to the imam's residence, which was directly connected to the mosque. My mother often prepared meals with love, and whenever something special was cooked, a portion was always set aside for the imam. She held deep admiration for people of faith, and the imam was regarded as one of the most righteous men in the area. He had no family with him, no wife, no children. Having moved from a distant village, he lived alone in the modest quarters provided by the mosque. Wearing a white cap and traditional attire with a long white beard that enhanced his aura, the imam's voice echoed with authority. During sermons, even from inside our home, we could hear his powerful words. His speech stirred something within, often raising goosebumps and leaving one longing to hear more of his wisdom. It was a voice that made people listen and reflect. Because our house was immediately next to the mosque, sometimes the soft recitation of scripture from his home would drift into ours through the open window above the shared wall. On such days, the entire atmosphere would feel peaceful and solemn, as if touched by something sacred. One day, a delicious pot of biryani was simmering on the stove. My mother handed me a covered plate and asked me to deliver it to the imam's house. I was 16 at the time. With no male family member present in the home, it had become routine for me to deliver food to the imam's door. Usually, when I knocked, the imam would open the door himself, always with calm politeness and humility. But that day was different. When I knocked gently on the wooden door, it creaked open, not by the imam, but by a girl about my age. Her presence startled me. I had never known anyone else live there. The imam was known to be alone. Who was she? She greeted me with a soft voice, and I returned the gesture respectfully. I explained that I lived next door and had brought food. She reached out to take the plates from my hands, and I couldn't help but notice how her fingers trembled. The tremor was clear. Her hands were shaking. I paused at the doorstep, unsure whether to wait or leave. Before I could decide, she spoke again. "You can come inside. The imam is not home right now," she said. Her voice was calm, but carried a hint of something deeper, maybe hesitation, maybe fear. I had never been inside the imam's quarters before, and curiosity tugged at me. Taking a cautious step inside, I entered a world I never expected to see. The moment I stepped into the imam's residence, I realized how different it was from what I had imagined. It was a simple two-room house, small but meticulously kept. The furniture was minimal, yet everything was organized with care. The space had an air of discipline, as though someone had taken great effort to maintain its order. This home, I knew, was provided to the imam as part of his duties, allowing him to live close to the mosque and fulfill his responsibilities with ease. The girl disappeared into the kitchen with the plates, and I remained standing in the hallway, hesitant to explore further. When she returned, she was holding the empty dishes and appeared calmer, though her eyes told another story. They were swollen and red, as if she had been crying. She tried to avoid eye contact, but I couldn't ignore the sadness etched on her face. What took me completely by surprise, though, was her appearance. She was strikingly beautiful, fair-skinned with soft pink cheeks and large honey-colored eyes that looked as though they held a lifetime of stories. Her golden hair spilled from beneath her scarf long enough to reach past her shoulders. I had never seen anyone quite like her in real life. Her beauty was the kind that one might expect to see in a painting or a dream. Still unsure of how to begin a conversation, I smiled politely and asked, "Are you related to the imam?" My voice sounded more nervous than I intended. She looked at me for a brief moment and then replied with difficulty, "I'm his sister." Her voice trembled slightly, and I noticed she didn't offer more than that. Hearing this brought a sense of relief. It was comforting to know that the imam now had someone from his family with him. Living alone as a man of faith must have been difficult, and having a sister nearby could ease that burden. Yet something about her demeanor didn't sit right with me. She seemed distant, as though her mind was far away, and her face wore a sadness that words couldn't express. I offered her my name, telling her I lived next door, and if she ever needed anything, she should feel free to call out. "Our homes are divided by a single wall," I said gently. "Your voice will reach us easily." She gave a small smile and introduced herself as Fatima. "I've come from the village. I'll be staying here for a few days," she added softly. Her tone carried an unmistakable melancholy. It didn't sound like someone enjoying a visit. It felt like she had left something behind unwillingly. I assumed she missed her home. After all, relocating to a new place could be difficult, especially in the city. At that time, I had no way of knowing the truth hidden behind her quiet sadness. I had no idea what secrets she was carrying or what dangers lurked behind that very door. When I returned home, my mother asked why I had taken so long. I told her about Fatima, how she had arrived from the village and was staying with her brother for a few days. My mother's reaction was warm. She seemed pleased that the imam finally had a family member by his side. "You should have invited her over," she said. "She must feel lonely all day. The imam is always at the mosque." I hesitated. "They follow strict traditions," I replied gently. "It might not be easy for her to visit, especially with men around the house, but I can continue to visit her instead." My mother nodded in agreement. She appreciated kindness, especially toward those considered righteous or isolated. The next day, she made a pot of sweet saffron rice and handed me a plate for the imam's house. Before leaving, I told her, "I'd like to spend some more time with Fatima today." She agreed, reminding me to return before evening. With the plate in my hands, I walked next door once more. This time, when I knocked, Fatima opened the door with a faint smile. Her eyes were tired, but something about my visit seemed to bring her a sense of ease. She welcomed me inside without hesitation. The imam, I knew, would be in the mosque at this hour. He often spent this time answering questions and engaging with the congregation. Fatima invited me to sit with her. There was a quiet air of tension in the room, but I smiled and tried to put her at ease. "I came to chat," I said, "if that's all right with you." She nodded slowly and said, "I'd like that." We sat together on her charpai, and I began asking gentle questions about her life. She answered cautiously, often fidgeting with her fingers. I learned that she had parents back in the village, along with an older brother besides the imam. She didn't mention them much, and her voice lacked enthusiasm. It seemed she wasn't used to sharing. I sensed that our conversation was one-sided, and at one point, I started to stand, thinking perhaps I had overstayed. But to my surprise, she reached out and held my hand. "Stay a little longer," she whispered. "You being here makes me feel less alone." That single sentence opened something inside me. Her voice was low, almost fragile, as though she'd been holding it in for too long. I sat back down without hesitation. We didn't talk much after that. Silence filled the space between us, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Eventually, she broke the silence herself. "I want to go back home," she said. "I don't like it here, but my father sent me, and now I don't know when I'll be allowed to return." Her words were filled with longing, but also resignation. I listened quietly, unaware that her story was just beginning, and that behind her longing to return home there were shadows she hadn't yet revealed. I sat beside her, trying to understand the weight behind her words. Fatima's desire to return home didn't sound like a simple case of homesickness. It was deeper, almost like she had been exiled. I wanted to reassure her, so I said gently, "You'll adjust to city life. It just takes time. Maybe you can even join a school here. We could go together. It might help you feel more at ease." She looked at me with a faint, almost amused smile and shook her head. "Girls in our community aren't allowed to study," she said quietly. "They're married off early, sometimes before they even understand what marriage really means. No one asks what we want. No one cares about our dreams." Her voice didn't rise, but it was filled with something sharp. Disappointment, perhaps, or quiet rebellion. She continued, "My brother and father are already searching for someone to marry me. I don't think I'll be here much longer." Her eyes began to fill with tears, but she didn't let them fall. That brief glimpse into her life made my heart ache. I reached for her hand and squeezed it gently. "You don't have to accept anything you don't want," I said. "You can say no. Your brother is a religious man. He teaches others about right and wrong. Surely he'll understand that a girl's consent matters. That's what our faith teaches, doesn't it?" Fatima let out a hollow laugh, one that sounded more like disbelief than amusement. "You don't know him," she said flatly. "You only see the man everyone else sees, but behind closed doors, he is someone else. He is not the person he pretends to be in the mosque." I froze, unsure how to respond. I had always thought of the imam as a pillar of virtue, a man whose words could bring peace and guidance. Fatima's words shook that image. She went on, her voice now more composed but still heavy. The more someone seems attached to religion, the more fiercely they are attacked by darkness. My brother, he's not what he seems. But no one would ever believe that. I don't even blame you for not understanding. You're not the first. As she spoke, 2 silent tears rolled down her cheeks. I reached into my dupatta and offered her a corner to wipe them. She took it with a grateful nod. Don't worry, she said softly. I'm not asking you to do anything. Just don't mention this to anyone. Whatever happens in this house should stay within these walls. If people find out, my brother's reputation will be destroyed. There was fear in her voice, but something else too, loyalty perhaps, or helplessness. I didn't know what to say. All I could do was sit beside her, holding her hand, silently praying that she was wrong. But in my heart, I feared she wasn't. Our quiet friendship grew slowly over the next few weeks. I couldn't visit her every day. School and responsibilities kept me busy. But whenever my mother cooked something special, she would ask me to take a portion to the imam's home. I always volunteered. It became a silent agreement between us, a chance for me to check in on Fatima and make sure she was still holding on. Each time I visited, her face looked a little more tired, her voice was softer, and her hands trembled more often. And yet, she never complained openly. She would tell me small stories about her village, avoiding anything that revealed too much. But her sadness remained etched in every word. One afternoon, I was sitting with her on her bed, trying to cheer her up with tales from school when the front door slammed open. The heavy sound startled both of us. We heard firm footsteps approaching, and then a sharp voice called out, "Fatima, who are you speaking to?" The tone was like nothing I had ever heard before. Cold, commanding, threatening. It was the imam. The voice belonged to a man I thought I knew, the same man whose sermons echoed with kindness and humility. But this voice was stripped of all softness. It struck like a blade. Fatima's reaction was immediate. Her entire body tensed. Her hands clutched the edge of the bed, her face turned pale, and her eyes darted toward the door in panic. I had never seen anyone react to a family member like that. It wasn't respect, it was terror. He stepped into the room, his presence filling the space like a shadow. But the moment he saw me, his expression changed. The harshness vanished. He smiled politely, his tone suddenly light. "Please continue your conversation," he said. "I didn't know we had a guest." With that, he stepped out of the room. The moment he left, it felt as though air returned to the space. Fatima exhaled, almost collapsing onto the bed. She sat down slowly, like someone regaining strength after an illness. I turned toward her, confused and alarmed. "Why are you so afraid of him?" I asked. "He's your brother. He's not a stranger." Before I could say more, she pressed her hand firmly over my mouth. "Please," she whispered. "Don't let your voice carry. If he hears you, everything will become worse." She looked around as if someone might be watching, even though we were alone. Her fear was real, and now I was beginning to feel it too. Something inside me shifted that day. I could no longer see the imam the same way. The mask he wore outside had slipped, just for a moment, and what I saw underneath was chilling. And still, Fatima said nothing more. But her silence now screamed louder than ever. After that unsettling visit, I couldn't get Fatima's expression out of my mind. The fear in her eyes, the tremble in her hands, and the way she had silenced me with her palm, it all replayed in my thoughts. I had always believed in the imam's image as a noble man, but that day had shown me a crack in his perfect facade. I couldn't stay quiet any longer. The next time I visited, I didn't bring food. I came only for her. When she opened the door, she seemed surprised, but not unhappy. I stepped inside, sat with her on the same woven bed, and looked her straight in the eyes. "There's something wrong here," I said quietly. "You say we're friends, then tell me the truth." She avoided my gaze at first, her fingers twisted in her lap, her lips parted but said nothing. I waited, watching her chest rise and fall with each shallow breath. Finally, she spoke. "You won't believe me," she murmured. "No one ever does." "Try me," I replied. Her shoulders slumped. She seemed to surrender something inside herself. He's not just strict, she said slowly. He's controlling. He doesn't let me speak to anyone without his permission. He checks everything I say, everything I do. I can't write letters. I can't make phone calls. He doesn't allow it. He says it's to protect me, but it feels more like a prison. My chest tightened. He wants me to marry someone I've never met, she continued. They arranged it back home, and when I said I didn't agree, my father sent me here. To him. Her eyes flickered toward the door, as if expecting it to burst open again. I thought maybe he'd protect me, she said bitterly. He's supposed to know the rules. He preaches them every day. But here, behind this door, he's someone else. He yells, he forces, he threatens. And now he wants me to agree to this marriage without question. I reached for her hand again, this time with trembling fingers. But you said nothing to anyone, not even your parents? They won't listen, she whispered. They care more about honor than happiness. And if people find out what really happens here, his image will be destroyed. He's terrified of that. That's why I can't speak. Her voice cracked on the last word. For a moment, I was silent. I didn't know whether to cry or scream. The man people called righteous, the one whose prayers we had listened to through our walls, was slowly crushing the spirit of the girl who trusted him most. Why me? I asked finally. Why tell me all this? Fatima looked at me with tired eyes. Because I needed someone to hear it once. Just once. Even if nothing changes. Her voice had no hope in it, only relief. She had finally spoken. And now I couldn't unhear it. After that day, I couldn't stop thinking about Fatima's words. They clung to my thoughts like a shadow, following me into my quiet moments. Her fear, her silence, and the truth she finally confessed had changed something inside me. I began to see the Imam not as a holy figure, but as a man hiding behind sacred words, a man who, despite his knowledge, had become blind to compassion. For a full week, I didn't visit. Exams had started, and between studies and routine, I kept myself occupied. But the guilt never left. Every evening, I stared at the wall that divided our houses and wondered if she was okay. I wanted to believe she was holding on, waiting for me. When my schedule finally cleared, my mother made biryani and handed me a plate. Take this to Fatima, she said with a warm smile. She must be missing home-cooked food. I agreed immediately, grateful for the excuse. As I stepped into the familiar courtyard of the Imam's house, something felt different. The stillness was unnerving. I knocked. This time, the door opened slowly, and it wasn't Fatima standing there. It was the Imam. He greeted me politely, a soft smile on his face, but it felt forced. I handed him the plate and asked casually, Is Fatima inside? I haven't seen her in a while. The Imam's expression didn't change. She's not here, he said calmly. She's returned to the village. Her marriage has been arranged. She won't be coming back. For a second, I couldn't respond. My voice caught in my throat. Oh, she didn't say anything, I managed to whisper. She left quickly, he replied. There wasn't time to say goodbye. He smiled again, but this one chilled me. There was something hollow in his voice, like a page being turned too cleanly in a book that wasn't finished. I walked home slowly, trying to process what I'd just heard. Fatima, married off and gone, just like that? She hadn't even sent a message, hadn't waited to see me one last time. It didn't make sense. None of it did. Back home, my mother asked about her, and I repeated the Imam's words. She sighed and nodded, saying perhaps Fatima was needed back home. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, deeply wrong. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying our last conversation, her eyes filled with fear, her voice almost gone. She had trusted me with her truth. She had spoken not to ask for help, but simply to be heard. And now she had vanished without a trace. I tried to believe she was safe. I told myself over and over that maybe her family had accepted her wishes, that perhaps she was living happily in her village, but something inside me whispered otherwise, and the silence between those walls had never felt louder. 15 days passed since I last saw Fatima. I tried to convince myself she had gone back willingly, that she had perhaps accepted her fate. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. Her sudden disappearance didn't feel natural. It felt like a page torn from a book before the ending. One evening, just as the sun dipped behind the rooftops, there was a knock at our door. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, two police officers stood outside, their faces serious but not aggressive. They asked to speak with me. My father stepped into the hallway, confused. "What's the matter? Has something happened?" The officers reassured him. "Your daughter hasn't done anything wrong. We just need to ask her a few questions about someone she knew." They were invited inside. I sat across from them, nervous, unsure what they were going to say. Then came the question I hadn't expected. "Do you know a girl named Fatima?" I blinked, startled. Yes, she was staying next door, the imam's sister, but she's gone. She went back to her village, that's what the imam told me. One officer leaned forward. "And who told you that exactly?" "The imam," I answered. "He said she left quickly, her marriage was arranged." The two men exchanged a glance. "We've heard that you and Fatima were close," the second officer said. "She confided in you. We'd like you to tell us everything she ever shared with you." I hesitated. Fatima had made me promise to keep her secrets. She feared what might happen if they were ever spoken aloud, but the concern on the officers' faces and their insistence made me waver. Finally, I began to speak. Every detail I could remember, every word she had whispered in fear, I shared it all. When I finished, one of them nodded gravely. "Thank you. You've helped us more than you realize." And then came the truth that shattered everything I believed. When the officers stood to leave, I followed them to the door, my heart pounding. I needed to know. "Why are you asking about Fatima?" I asked, barely managing to keep my voice steady. "Is she okay? What happened to her?" One of them turned and looked at me with a heaviness that made my knees weak. "You deserve to know, since you were the last person she trusted. But we warn you, the truth is difficult." I felt my breath catch. "Fatima never returned to her village," the officer said slowly. "She never got married." I couldn't speak. My lips moved, but no words came out. The officer continued. "Her body was found in a locked chest dumped near a garbage site on the edge of town. A few scavengers discovered it and called us. We traced it back here, and everything pointed toward the imam." The floor beneath me seemed to tilt. I clutched the doorframe for balance. "We conducted an investigation quietly," he explained. "The imam tried to maintain his usual routine, but we found inconsistencies in his statements. Your testimony filled in the missing pieces." I shook my head, unwilling to accept what I was hearing. "He killed her?" I whispered, tears already streaming down my cheeks. The officer nodded. "Fatima refused a marriage arranged by her family. She wanted to marry someone she truly loved. A boy from outside her caste. Her family disapproved, and she was sent here. But she still resisted. The imam saw her defiance as disgrace, as rebellion. And one night, he murdered her." My hands trembled uncontrollably. "Her throat was slit," the officer said, his voice now low and grim. "The crime was brutal, calculated, and he buried the truth under silence, hoping no one would look too closely." I broke down right there, unable to hold myself together. My mother rushed forward and wrapped her arms around me as I sobbed against her chest. "How could someone like him do this?" I cried. "He spoke of piety. He led prayers. People looked up to him. I believed in him." My father entered, his face pale with disbelief. "The police arrested him earlier today," he said. "The neighbors found out." There was an uproar. He didn't even deny it. He confessed everything. The words stabbed deeper than anything I'd heard before. Fatima had told me the truth, and I hadn't believed her. She had cried in silence, begged for help without asking, and I had only listened. If I had spoken sooner, maybe she would still be alive. Now she was gone. And the man who took her life had once been the most trusted figure in our community. In the days that followed, The news of the imam's arrest spread like wildfire. People who once stood behind him in prayer now stood outside the police station in shock and disbelief. His sermons, his teachings, his image, all shattered in an instant. The man they called a guardian of faith had been living a lie. But none of that brought Fatima back. I spent nights lying awake, staring at the ceiling, haunted by her voice. Her laughter, her trembling hands, the way she whispered her fears into my ears, all of it looped in my memory like a silent prayer that had never been answered. She had carried a storm inside her, and all I had done was offer shelter for a moment. When I finally found the strength to tell my parents everything, her love for a boy from another caste, her refusal to marry a stranger, and how she was punished for wanting control over her own life, they didn't judge her. They wept. My father, quiet and reserved, said, "A man who murders his own sister because she wanted to choose her future is not a man. He's a coward hiding behind tradition." Fatima's story became a lesson our entire neighborhood would never forget. Schools held seminars. The mosque was closed for weeks. A new imam was sent from another city, but it took time for people to trust the pulpit again. I still visit her grave sometimes. I bring flowers she never got to hold on her wedding day. I sit beside her and whisper everything I couldn't say when she was alive. Sometimes I cry, sometimes I smile, and every time I promise her the same thing, that I will never stay silent again. Because silence is what buried her the first time, and silence is what nearly let her brother walk away. Now I speak for her and for every girl who is told her voice doesn't matter.